There we go. I do believe we're live, so I'll say indeed, and greetings unto you, beloved and holy friends. It is always a dear pleasure having you here for these moments, for these conscious evolutions, for these opportunities for us to consider that it's always darkest before the light. At least that's what we've been considering today. We've been talking about how the darkness we experience can be seen in the same way as the darkness that is the night, and how it is very normal for people to be asleep when it's dark. And if we are in dark times, then it means there will be light soon again. And instead of thinking about this future and this present moment that we're in from this perspective of having to brace ourselves in a fear response, we can think of it from the same place of bracing ourselves for a sunrise. And all you need to do to be able to brace yourself adequately for the sunrise is wake up in order to see it. Right? Like the sunrise is going to happen whether you're there to see it or not, kind of mentality. And seeing it might bring a moment of beauty, of clarity, of appreciation into your life that you might not have otherwise had if you hadn't. All right. So seeing this matter of the future from a perspective of a sunrise instead of something that is catastrophic might be the way. And in that, we start having a conversation about the past and how in the past, the very first uh, modern, technically capitalist company decimated what we think of as the power that used to be. Right? And I wanted to, and we're going to, in this horizontal stream, go a little bit in depth about that as a change. Right? And if that is what happened in the past, and we look at what is happening right now, what does that mean for our future? And one, I believe that since that time, things have gotten better, right? It might not have been very great. People got warred, people got bow blasted by cannons, a bunch. But eventually, that did bring about change, right? And some of that change has been beneficial. I'm not saying all of that change has been beneficial, but some of that change definitely has been beneficial. And in the same way, I hope so for the future. So we're going to consider a little bit. I'll start all over from the top, considering. Below is an overview of how one of history's first modern capitalist companies, the Dutch East Indian Company, the VOC, transformed global power structures, undermined traditional forms of monarchical rule, and in a sense, made monarchy obsolete in certain domains. I'll cover the key facts, timelines, and mechanisms of power transfer and the parallels and contrasts. Again, the dark and the light. Nancy's here too. Hey, friend. It's nice having you. Kristen's here as well. Bless. As you said, for the horizontal ones. Love to you, friend. I'm happy to have you here. Alrighty. Mechanisms of power struggle. Okay, yeah. No. Certain domains, timelines, parallels. Okay, yeah. And contrasts with today's technological driven capitalism. The VOC and the transformation of power in the early 17th to 18th centuries. In 1602, the VOC was established by the Dutch state. Its charter was granted a 21-year monopoly on trade in Asia and endowed it with quasi-governmental powers. It could wage war, negotiate treaties, build forts, mint coins, and even administer colonial territories. This legal and financial innovation, including the insurance of shares that could be traded on what is now the world's first stock exchange, marked the birth of modern joint stock capitalism, where a bunch of people put their money into your company, and if your company grows in value, then my money has appreciated in value as well. Innovative financial instrument. Investors were promised regular dividends, a concept that later evolved into divided policy, and the company's shares became tradable assets. This created a dynamic secondary market and laid the groundwork for modern investment banking, corporate governance, and even short selling. The decline of the monarchical model, a shift from feudal power to corporate dominance. In early centuries, power was concentrated in hereditary monarchies, where kings ruled by divine right. The VOC's rise signaled a shift. Rather than a single ruler wielding absolute authority, power now came to be accumulated by corporations that mobilized capital from a broad base of investors. The Dutch state, and indeed with many European states, began to rely on these companies to manage overseas trade and even state warfare. The VOC was not simply a business, but became a tool of statecraft, blurring the lines between public authority and private enterprise. Institutional innovation over monarchies. The method of risk pooling, profit sharing, and governance introduced by the VOC effectively supplanted many traditional monarchical practices. Rather than a singular hereditary authority managing territories, the VOC network structure distributed power among shareholders and appointed managers, who in turn governed vast overseas domains. This paved the way for the modern capitalist state where commerce, finance, and technology now underpin power rather than birthright alone. The timeline of how this change evolved. In case you forgot, the tragedy of commons, I learned about it in art history and in college. I'll ask it to give me that as well. Can you also tell me about the tragedy of commons? I'll let that think and then I'll continue reading. The timeline of how that change unfolded. In the early 1600s, the VOC was founded and quickly expanded, establishing trade posts and colonies in Asia. Its innovative financial structures allowed it to fund expensive voyages and military expeditions. It sounds doom and gloom, but it's just what they call it. No, it's okay. Like I'm pretty sure I'm going to instantly recognize what it is as I'm starting to read it, but it's not clear to me, and I look forward to it becoming so. Zano, thank you. So, military expeditions. Then, in the mid 17th century, through aggressive trade policies, military action, brutal suppression of local resistance in the Banda Islands and elsewhere, the VOC secured a near monopoly on the spice trade. You know what the new spice is? AI. Its profits and scale of operations made it the world's most valuable corporation. In the late 17th to 18th centuries, as the VOC's power grew, traditional monarchical institutions in Europe gradually ceded ground to capitalist enterprises. The VOC's practices in merging state power with private enterprise and creating legal structures for stock markets became templates for modern capitalism. Over roughly 2 centuries, what had once been absolute monarchies began transforming or giving way to structures where economic power was a decisive and royal decree. The parallels with modern technology companies, corporate power in the digital age. Today, we see parallels with technology giants like Google, Amazon, Apple, OpenAI, Microsoft, Nvidia. Uh, yeah, like the VOC, these companies have amassed enormous influence and wealth, not only in economic terms, but also in political and social spheres. They too have redefined how capital is raised and how risk is managed. using global networks to challenge traditional state authority, the state and corporate entanglement. Just as the VOC blurred the lines between state power and private wealth, modern tech companies sometimes function as quasi states by influencing public policy, creating their own regulatory frameworks, and even providing essential infrastructure. The lessons from the VOC era both is that there is innovation and there is excesses. Offer a historical mirror for today's debates on corporate governance and inequality and the distribution of power. In summary, the VOC's rise from a state sponsored trading venture to a global corporate powerhouse illustrates a critical moment in the transition from monarchical feudalism to modern capitalism. Over the course of roughly 200 years, it reconfigured global trade, undermined traditional monarchical authorities in favor of collective market driven power, and introduced financial innovation that continue to shape our world. Today's tech giants mirror the transformation, reminding us that while this means a power change from spice routes to internet, the fundamental dynamics of capital and control remain deeply entwined. Spice AI, spicy AI. Oh, that's hilarious. So the tragedy of commons is a concept in economics and ecology that describes a situation where individuals acting independently in their own self-interest ultimately deplete a shared resource. Oh yeah, I do know the tragedy of commons. Even when it's clear that it's not in anyone's long-term interest for this to happen. The core idea. At its heart, the strategy of commons shows how common resources, such as grazing land, oh yeah, okay, so I already remember how this is supposed to be described. So the strategy of commons as an idea, right? And it is like grazing land. If I have sheep, right? And it is, we live in a world where everything is common land. Everything is for everyone. I have a direct financial incentive, right? My sheep will make more sheep if I push them to go and eat all of the things here, right? And I can just like keep letting them go. I can keep ripping trees out of the ground to make more grassland, right? And they can keep destroying that habitat technically, even though I know it's not good. It's good for me. It's good for me. And then me being like that, it's good for me. Next person over sees me being like that. So he's doing the same thing, right? And before we know it, all of us are clamoring for the exact same common resources. And then we end up destroying it, right? We end up making it cease to exist. But let's actually go properly into it. Such as grazing land, fisheries, clean air, or water, tend to be overused when everyone has free access. Each person or group gains the full benefit of exploiting the resource, while the cost of overuse is shared by all. As a result, if every individual maximizes their short term gain, tries to get their sheep as fat as possible, it's like when owning land starts, is yeah, uh, short term gain, without coordination, the resource can become depleted or degraded. Historical and theoretical background. Garrett Hardin's 1968 essay. Although the idea has roots in earlier observations, the phrase was popularized by the ecologist Garrett Hardin in his influential 1968 article published in Science. Hardin argued that freedom in a commons brings ruin to all because each individual's rational use leads to collective irrational outcomes. Imagine a common pasture available to all local herders. Each herder gains by adding more animals, but the pasture has a limited capacity. If all herders acted in their own self interest, the pasture becomes overgrazed, eventually leaving nothing for anyone. Yeah. Yeah, you see, I did know about the commons thing. I was just like, now we will. Jovan, sending you love. Thank you for sending all of our friends love to Susan here too. Good evening to you, friends. Nice having you. Where is it for you where it's evening? Do let us know, Susan. We're talking about the tragedy of commons. Modern implications, environmental challenges. The tragedy of commons is often cited in discussions about overfishing, deforestation, air pollution, and climate change. In these cases, the commons might be the world's oceans, forests, or atmosphere. Potential solutions. Various strategies have been proposed to address this problem. Regulation and enforcement, governmental controls, or international agreements can limit the use of the resource. Privatization. Assigning private ownership can align individuals' incentives with sustainable management and communal management. In many cases, local groups can successfully manage shared resources through cooperation and agreed upon rules. A point later explored by Eleanor Ostrom, who demonstrated that communities often develop sustainable practices when they create clear rules and monitor use. And in the future, we're going to build those rules on blockchain technology, right? Because in that way, we can also create smart contracts, so we can like issue people the resources that they need, right? And we'll be able to keep track of all of the resources being used, and we'll have super intelligent machines that can actually give us accurate predictions of where we're supposed to be going, how we're supposed to be doing things, so we can ensure we don't hurt our collective. Criticisms and new ones. It's not inevitable. While Hardin's model is persuasive, later research has shown that tragedy is not always unavoidable. Communities with long traditions of managing common resources, for example, irrigation systems or village grazing lands, have often established effective self regulation mechanisms. Context matters. The outcome depends on factors such as the size of the community, communication channels among users, and the mobility of the resources and the enforceability of rules. You see, blockchain tech literally solves for every single one of those problems. With blockchain, the whole world is the community. If you have access to the internet, you are part of decentralized ledgers. Communication channels. You can build communication software on blockchains, right? So, boom, communication channels already has been solved for, but extra solved for. Mobility of resources. It's blockchain. It's very easy to send resources on blockchain. And then the enforceability of rules, right? With smart contracts, if somebody doesn't bring their side, then they don't get paid, right? It's in the contract and it's smart. So it can be attached to an oracle, which literally has the ability to see into our world and take real world data and make it a part of, the technological world. The interwebs. When I was a kid, I was an anarchist. This made me think about it more. I may be a tiny bit more libertarian, but still politically homeless. Me too. Zano, I was also an anarchist. I think I still am, but I am probably, if you had to look at my reasoning, also more libertarian, right? Like people need to be provided for, their basic needs, and then other than that, they basically need to be left alone. Right. I'm pretty sure that's the libertarian way of doing it as well, right? Can you please help us create some nuance and definition on what it means to be a libertarian? With these things in mind, it's very easy for us to feel hopeless, but I believe in blockchain technology to help us solve some of those problems that you've shared, right? Like with blockchain, we do technically give ourselves, literally the entire world, access to the same community, right, of value creation. We can build dApps that literally allows us to communicate decentralized on those systems as well. It's easy sharing resources on a platform like that. And what's the last one? It's easy to enforce rules because you can create smart contracts. So, how can the idea of creating a little bit more of a libertarian world also integrate with using blockchain technology? Zano, I love that term, politically homeless. It is, it is nice. I think it's apt as well. think it's better to be politically homeless, right? You might just get the other homes throwing stuff at you once you exit yours, no matter which side you're on. Literally, that's the point I'm making, right? If you go into any one of the houses, you're gonna get thrown with shit if you exit any one of the houses. Does help that I'm South African. I don't get to align myself politically. I'm very much anti-government in general, unfortunately. Right, and in South Africa, private companies are basically the one that take care of people more than our actual governments. Libertarianism is a political philosophy that places individual liberty, the right of each person to live and act as they choose without infringement on others' rights, yeah, as its highest value. At its core, libertarianism emphasizes self ownership and personal autonomy. Yeah, the blockchain is going to be like self ownership and personal autonomy on blockchain are like bestest friends. Every individual is the sole proprietor of their own body and life. That means their decisions, their property, and their personal endeavor should be left to the individual without any coercion, whether by state or others, viewed as illegitimate unless it is solely to prevent harm to someone else. Free markets and voluntary association. Libertarians argue that a society in which economic and social exchanges occur voluntarily, without forced taxation or coercion and regulation, leads to both innovation and prosperity. The markets, when left largely free from government intervention, naturally coordinate activities through spontaneous order, a concept that echoes classical liberal ideas. Minimal government intervention. The ideal libertarian state, or minimal state, exists primarily to protect individuals from aggression and fraud. Beyond that, government power, seen as both morally suspect and practically inefficient, as concentrated power tends to erode freedom. Even if you're in the middle, you will get stuff thrown at you. Yeah, you'll be, by being in the middle, you might just get hit by some of the stuff being thrown between the two houses. Right, when we're like, hey bro, you do realize we're living in a neighborhood and all of this stuff that you're throwing is falling on the fucking streets, bro, and it's disgusting. Can you stop? Can you stop? Minimal government intervention. Yeah, huzzah. The philosophy isn't monolithic. Different strands from right libertarianism and left libertarianism debate to the extent and the nature of property rights and the proper role, if any, of government. Yet all share a skepticism of centralized authority. Yeah, we don't like that. We don't want a centralized authority. That's not good. It's not good for anybody. It's really not. We've gotten past that, right? That's why we stopped the whole kings and queens thing. We're like, no, actually, let's not do it like that. Property rights of the government extend to debate and property rights of the government. Yet all share skepticism of centralized authority and have a commitment to our individual rights. Yes. Integrating libertarianism with blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, with its decentralized architecture, transparency, self executing smart contracts, offer a very powerful technology avenue for realizing libertarian ideals. First and foremost, there is the decentralization of authorities. Huzzah! Traditional power structures, banks, governments, and the intermediaries concentrate decision making in a very small number of hands. In contrast, public, permissionless blockchain enables anyone to participate without needing to rely on a central authority. This distributed nature mirrors the libertarian vision of dispersing power among individuals rather than vesting in a state or corporate hierarchies. Open and transparent value creation by using decentralized applications like dApps. Blockchain platforms allow for global, borderless participation in economic and social activities. Every participant has access to the same ledger of transactions, meaning that value creation, resource sharing, and the exchange of ideas can occur on a level playing field. This transparency reinforces trust, a key tenet for those who reject opaque government and corporate practices. Logical AI, what's happening with the refugees in South Africa? I am a South African, and I can tell you that the refugee status as it is right now is going to be pretty inaccessible to most, right? I believe that the refugee status, as Trump has set it out to be, is that if your farm gets expropriated without compensation, like our government has now given people permission to do, or given themselves permission to do, given themselves the right of law to do, you are eligible to be refugeed in America, right? But that isn't really happening to that extent, where people's farms are just being taken without compensation right now. So there's not a lot of need for that at this point, right? That's why people in South Africa were like, no, we're good. We're going to stay. Thank you. But again, if people take your house, then I don't think you're gonna be like, I'm good, thanks, I'm gonna stay, because you won't have somewhere to stay. Sorry, but can't wait to listen to the rest. So much love. Thank you, Kristen, for joining us for this moment. It was nice having you. And then the last one is smart contracts for rule enforcement. One of blockchain's most promising features is smart contracts, self executing pieces of code that enforce agreed upon rules automatically when preset conditions are met. For libertarians, this mechanism reduces the need for external enforcement by central authorities, ensuring that voluntary agreements are honored transparently and reliably. In a truly libertarian blockchain ecosystem, rules are encoded in immutable contracts, sidestepping human error and deceit and greed and manipulation by power intermediaries. The nuance, the challenges, and the possibilities that could come with this. While blockchain holds promise as a tool to advance libertarian values, this integration is not without complications. Technically, it is not inherently libertarian. Depends on which blockchain. The same technology can empower individuals through decentralization, can also be used in more permissioned or centralized settings. For instance, permissioned blockchains used by banks or governments may replicate many of the traditional hierarchies that libertarians oppose. Yeah, of course. But like Cardano already exists, right? They literally allow the entire network to vote on changes to that system, right? And they have smart contracts. They have the ability to access oracles. Like it's like the tech already exists, right? And it's decentralized. So the governments, short of turning the internet off, cannot take away the systems that already be, right? And in that way, we won't have to rely in the future on the permission blockchains created by banks and governments, because there will already exist alternatives. And those who want to live in an alternative world, as Kristen brought into our minds yesterday, with the permissioned, no, the networked state. This is kind of what we're talking about. Like, we're going to create networked states. Many replicate, many of them. Thus, technology is not ideology free. Thus, technology is not ideology free. It reflects the values of governance choices of its designers. Yeah, but again, I think Cardano might be the only one that's like this. The entire network, every single ADA holder gets to be a part of governance, right? So it's not just the values and governance choices of its designers, but it's also the values and governance choices of its entire community globally, right? Which is a lot bigger of a deal. And I feel like that is libertarian, right? Feels like it to me at least. Design and community governance. Yeah, 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 yeah. To truly realize a libertarian vision, blockchain systems must be carefully designed to prevent the concentration of power. For example, through mining pools or validator cartels. The governance model, often debated under terms like on chain governance, must align with libertarian principles, ensuring that rulemaking remains transparent, consensual, and resistant to coercion. Cultural and political evolution. Libertarian ideas and blockchain technology are both evolving. The early promise of crypto as a freeing force is now tempted by real world regulatory pressure and complexities of integrating decentralized networks with established legal and financial systems. This dynamic interplay means that while blockchain can support a more decentralized and libertarian world, its trajectory will depend on both technical innovation and broader political context. With all that you've shared, and especially so with the nuance, the challenges, and the possibilities, one of the projects that I'm very interested in, because of their community governance and because of their peer reviewed approach, they try and do things the right way, is the project Cardano with their token, their native token ADA. Is Cardano a good fit for a libertarian world? I'm curious. I don't know right now, and I would like to get some more information on that. Nope, nope, nope. Nope, 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 nope. We'll dive a little bit deeper, and then we'll close off this fractal. Dark is before the light. What a trip it is. The VOC. I wonder how much they were worth at their all-time highs as well. The entire VOC's collective wealth and assets and stolen stuff. Cardano, Cardano, what? Cardano is often cited as a project that embodies many libertarian ideas. And here's a strong case to be made that its design aligns perfectly with the libertarian vision that you've shared of a decentralized, user empowered system. Here's how Cardano fits into the picture: decentralized governance and individual empowerment. One of the core libertarian values is reducing reliance on centralized authority. Cardano, Cardano's governance model, especially during its Voltaire era, is built on community involvement and decentralized decision making. By using mechanisms like Project Catalyst, where ADA holders vote on proposals, Cardano gives users a direct role in shaping the network's future. This aligns with the libertarian emphasis on individual autonomy and the belief that power should reside with the people rather than centralized entities. It's a research first, peer reviewed approach. Unlike some blockchains that launch quickly without formal academic scrutiny, Cardano was developed with a heavy emphasis on peer reviewed research and a scientific philosophy. This research first approach helps ensure that the protocol changes are robust, secure, and thoughtfully designed. Libertarians who value transparency and predictability in the rules governing their interactions would appreciate that Cardano's upgrades are backed by academic research and community consensus rather than by top down mandates. Transparency, security, and predictability. For many libertarians, one of the attractions of blockchain technology is its ability to replace trust in centralized institutions with trust in transparent, mathematically enforced rules and smart contracts. Cardano's design strives for both transparency and predictability, for example, in its fee structure and protocol parameters, which means that users can plan their economic and social interactions without fearing arbitrary changes. This system of rule by code is in line with the libertarian goal of minimizing the coercive power of governments and other centralized bodies. There are still some nuance and challenges. Of course, no system is perfect, and critics sometimes argue that Cardano's highly academic and methodical pace might slow innovation relative to more permissionless networks like Bitcoin. For libertarians who prize absolute freedom from all forms of centralized oversight, this more cautious approach might seem less radical. However, Cardano's model, by emphasizing open source development, robust peer review, and community voting, aims to balance the need for stability and security with libertarian desire for decentralization and individual empowerment. In conclusion, Cardano's emphasis on decentralized governance, its research driven development, and its transparent, rule enforced system makes it an attractive project for those who adhere to libertarian principles. It provides a framework where individual sovereignty and free market values are upheld, all while encouraging a collective decision making process that minimizes arbitrary or coercive intervention. For libertarians looking for a blockchain that not only promises decentralization, but also works to realize it through rigorous, community driven, open source processes, Cardano is indeed a compelling fit. This aligns with libertarian ideals, is one reason why many in the Cardano community, especially those who value a peer reviewed, thoughtfully engineered system, see ADA as more than just another cryptocurrency. They see it as a tool to help create the kind of free, decentralized world that we envision. Yeah, it's true. It's true. The future is freaking awesome if we make it so. And it's not easy. No, sir. Creating the future is not easy, especially when we've already created so much. Mel, where are you reading this from? This was me just having a conversation with a language model, OpenAI's language model, the reasoning one. This is the reasoning one. So, reasoning is basically like the new thing. It's the new thing. I wonder, why can't I let it reason more? Okay, there it is. Right. So there is a button that says reason. And I wonder if I say reason. Is there a reason? I want you to reason why this is bad. You keep it nice and simple. Let's see if it can reason any bad out of this. Any darkness, I would like to see. I've not been able to. Gotcha. Did you enjoy this little dive? I believe that these things will bring light, and a lot of it. Wondering about Cardano, it says. Wondering about governance model, raising concerns, examining and user concern about governance and peer reviewed, that it's overly bureaucratic, examining the drawbacks. Bottom of the line. Below is a line of reasoning that lays out some possible criticisms in the approach. Academic peer review versus organic grassroots innovation. Slower pace of development. From a libertarian angle, let the market figure it out. But the possible critique is that if a permissionless ecosystem must wait for top-down academic validation, it might limit the creative experiments or risk-taking that truly disrupt incumbent power structures. Elitism and barriers to entry. It is hard learning how to code, becoming an academic. That's definitely true. Governance structure can drift towards majority rule. True as well. And in that way, the only way for majority not to rule is for the majority to rule. Right. And again, that will always be a choice if we choose to make it. Practical alignment with regulators. That one is going to be a challenge, but it might be easier than it's ever been with things changing. The philosophy gap between vision and implementation. That can be a big one as well. Cult of personality. Yeah. Charles Hoskin's role as a high profile founder sometimes garners criticism from those who suspect founder centralization. From a libertarian angle, if a single figure's opinions can strongly sway the chain's direction, the project is more personalistic than truly decentralized. So, even though that's true, and a lot of the direction that has been created was almost like him trying to drive it towards something. He's now given the keys to the community, right, to this car. The change real governance might resolve around a founder's influence, ironically replicating some top down dynamic libertarians typically reject. It's true. Yeah, that is definitely true. But again, we were talking about community, right? We were talking about community. And like you cannot have a community without people. Haridas, there are some Haridas. I think they're gone on their way again. So I used to identify as a straight up libertarian. However, these days, identify as a libertarian progressive. Hmm. I don't know if we have time to go into deep, because I do feel it is time for me to say goodbye today. I feel like my mind has grown more hopeful. There is a lot of change coming for our world, right? And we have technologies now that we never had before, right? When the VOC became a superpower on planet Earth and they would start bombing people and taking their land from them and etc etc, shooting them with cannon fire, like what are you gonna do? Huh? What are you gonna tell? You're gonna write someone a letter? That letter can get lost on the way there. They might not care. But we live in a world where we now have access to computers and cameras, and we have voices, and we are a part of a network, right? And in that way, we can create changes, be more resilient in ways that other people never before had the opportunity to be. So, yeah, there's hope. I'm gonna keep trying to be as hopeful as I possibly can be, over and over and over again, because I feel like I need to. Change is the only way. It will always be scary and is always uncertain. It is true. Love is true. Thank you, friends, for joining me despite the uncertainty that this world always holds. It was uncertain what you would find in this space today, and you still showed up for it. Thank you, friends, for joining me. And I'll see you again. Wait a second. Soon. I'm going to read you two poems because I didn't read you a poem yesterday. So I'll read you both. First, I'll show you the flower again. I'll show you both. Yesterday's flower. Day before yesterday's flower. Yesterday's flower. We did see this one a little bit earlier. All right. Day before yesterday had a nice and short poem. It's called Boredom is Potential. Boredom is the hush between one thought and the next. A silent field waiting for seeds. In that pause, ideas can spark, shaping something new from emptiness. Welcome the law. Let it urge you to build, to dream of kinder worlds, to rewrite your day. For boredom is not your cage, but the threshold of possibility. Yeah, it's true. We will not be in boring times the next while. I can tell you that as well. This one is a little bit more 4-bar traditional. Where wires become bridges. We stand in a swirl of signals where pixels and pulses weave our days. A click can spark a war of words or light a path towards healing. They say the algorithms profit by our rage, fanning fear like embers in the night. Yet behind each post is a human voice, each screen a window into fragile hearts. Imagine if we use this boundless web to share more than fury or scorn, letting empathy bloom in the spaces between us, building unity out of our differences. In the vast realm of ones and zeros, we can mend frayed bonds, create new cities of care, digital arcs that carry hope and wonder across every border, every edge. The internet is not a monster nor a savior, but a mirror that reflects our choices. May we choose to gather our scattered lights and build something luminous together. Dark and light. Yow! This poem felt like it was supposed to be read today. I am happy I did. I appreciate your friends for joining me again. It's always a dear pleasure having you here in this uncertain world we're in, right? For me to add just like a little smidgen of certainty, right? Trying to add the certainty of Mel's gonna show up. I thank you, friends, for reminding me certainly that you'll show up too. I appreciate your friends, and I thank you for joining me. Goodbye for now. Until we do it again tomorrow.